Well. Welcome back to another episode of Mic Drop, made possible by the Believe Network and available everywhere you get your podcasts. Sirius XM included, so Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Google Play, and Sirius, thanks to the Believe Network. I am your host, Mike Asti, and with August now a couple weeks in and fall camps closing up or getting near closing up, and that college football season on the horizon, we are going to have a college football show, of course, kind of to preview the national scene a bit and then talk about West Virginia, the program that I covered. And I will be able to have that conversation with somebody that actually I just saw in West Virginia covering the Mountaineers program and Rich Rodriguez's return. And that is Bill Bender of the Sporting News. So again, Mike Asti here, Mic Drop, thanks to Believe in Sirius XM and everywhere you get your podcasts, and even video-wise on my personal YouTube channel, as we now will bring on Bill Bender of the Sporting News back to the show. Usually talk to him around this time of year, and the first thing he said to me when I saw him in Morgantown was, hey, we got to do a show soon. This is usually when we do shows. So, Bill, how are you? It's only been a few days since I last saw you, but how was your trip to and from Morgantown?
It was fun, and you showed me around a little bit. It was good to be there. It was a productive trip. We'll have a story coming about it soon about Rich Rodriguez's return there. And as I told you, I don't know if I told you, I at least told Mike Montoro that the Morgantown's special place. That's college football to me. That's the difference right there. Morgantown, Pullman, Clemson, those aren't NFL markets, and it was a lot of fun to go around the campus and see the practice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Tried to take Bill to Tudor's Biscuit World. They weren't open that day. We'll get them there at some point in the future. Great biscuits, not hating, but they just weren't open that day. They couldn't serve us, so we had to go somewhere else. Tudor's not a sponsor here of Mic Drop, so I won't give them any more plugs. But yeah, that's college football. That does scream college football. Rich Rodriguez screams college football, and we got college football coming up. Before we fully get to the Mountaineers, though, I kind of want to ask you a simple question, but you could take it any different way you want, because we've had a lot of people speaking out on the health of college football right now, all the way from the current president of the United States to Tom Brady recently. There are some critics, for sure, on the health of the sport, with now knee-deep into the transfer portal, NIL. We're now moving into more of a rev share world where it's going to be right out in Front Street on what these programs are paying these athletes, no longer really hiding behind collectives. And we've seen the good, bad, and the ugly of that in recent years. Where do you stand as somebody who's been covering this sport a long time? You've seen a lot of different iterations of this sport, but this one, I wonder if it was ever where you thought we would get to. But where do you feel we are just health-wise of the sport as we go into what could mark a new era in 2025? Maybe you could mark that as 2024, get the expanded playoff. Now in rev share, we're kind of in another new era of the sport, and maybe more conference realignment could be ahead as well. There are already rumors of that coming within the next decade.
Yeah, it's a complicated question because
it is. Yeah,
we're not going to go backward. I'm a guy that grew up, 80s, 90s football, BCS era. Those were revolutionary changes at the time with the BCS, traditional Big Ten background, where it was a foreign concept. If you're talking to me when I was 14 and you would have told me, hey, USC and UCLA will be in your conference when you're in your 40s, I'd been like, you're crazy. The Super League mentality is very real. And this kind of circles back to Morgantown. What's special about college football is being stripped away a little bit. Now, are there pros to it? Sure. I think the playoff system could be exciting. I've said all summer that I think the college football's best bet, even with these conferences is situated the way they are, is to make the playoff as compelling as possible and as perfect as possible. And if they can do that, it's something to point to. You and I were talking about West Virginia Pitt. Like, that stuff's going away.
Yeah, that's going to be gone for a few years. They do come back in 2029, but there's going to be a break. Yeah.
But I was telling you, and the example I used is, okay, USC Notre Dame. From USC's standpoint now, it doesn't, aside from historical context, the Notre Dame rivalry could go away. You're going east to play Penn State. You're going east to play Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, times have changed. I still love the sport. The NIL side of it, I don't know, Mike. I don't know what the right answer is. I want students to get benefits for what they're doing. I do. I just don't know if this is the right financial system to do it.
Yeah, and it is a complicated question that we really can't address here just on this show or any other show. Really, I don't know if it ever will be fully addressed. And yeah, we're not putting the genie back in the bottle, the toothpaste back in the tube, whatever analogy you want to give there. Bill Bender here joining me on Mic Drop, made possible again by Believe and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on Sirius XM. As we are talking college football and previewing a little bit of the 2025 season, the health of the sport. And I kind of am with you. I'm a little younger than you, but I do get, college football is not supposed to be like the NFL. It's supposed to be more of that regional rivalry type of sport. It's supposed to come off as more about student athletes. It's supposed to come off as more of a localized situation where maybe the backyard brawl is a big deal in this region, but maybe obviously, the Iron Bowl is a bigger deal in the South, and Bedlam is a bigger deal in a different part of the country and different rivalries all over. And those games matter more than any other. And what we've done now, and yeah, I think athletes were getting abused for a while when you have everybody making billions of dollars, at least millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, and you're making nothing. I definitely could see the point, when you're getting your jersey sold, your number on it without your name, and someone's making money and you're not. That wasn't really fair. You were able to have coaches go to a school, tell the recruits I'm going to be there forever. I'm bought in. Again, speaking of WVU, when Rich Rodriguez left in 2007, those players were left behind. Players had eligibility, including his stars. And in that era, if Pat White and Steve Slayton and those guys and Owen Smith said, well, you're gone. I played for you. I don't care about West Virginia. I want to leave now. Other schools clearly would have wanted them. They would have had to sit out a year, and that really could have hurt them. So coaches could do whatever, players could not. It was not a fair system before, but I do feel that in our effort to make it fair, we've swung it so far one way that it is now out of control. I don't know if you get regulations. I don't know if you get contracts in the future. I'm not even sure how that would fully work. I mentioned the president's involvement or whoever will be the president at that point. I mean, it's a funny thing, but when you think about it, if you do put contracts in place, you're getting into a healthcare debate. I mean, Rich Rod's going to work these kids more than 40 hours? If they have a contract of more than 40 hours and they're an employee, are you paying healthcare? And how can schools afford that? That's a lot more money they'd have to put out. And who are they going to distinguish as the 40-hour employee versus a part-time employee? How is that going to work? So it's a gigantic ball of wax, but the one thing you definitely do lose is the rivalries. I mean, the backyard brawl will come back, even though it's going to go away after this coming season. But let's be honest, when you bring up the Notre Dame and USC and scheduling certain rivalries, it doesn't matter as much what you do against each other for West Virginia and Pitt if they're not in the same conference than what you do in conference play. And that's just the way it is. If you lose the brawl, but you win the conference, ACC or Big 12, you're in the playoff. That's better than winning the brawl and losing within the conference. And then separate from that, it's about strength of schedule too. That's a gigantic deal. We've already seen Indiana, for example, come out of nowhere. They're a basketball school. They hire Cignetti. They get in the playoff in year one with him. They had 3 bowl wins in 150 years, and now they're in the playoff in year one with a new coach. And they're intentionally, publicly saying that they don't really want anything on their out-of-conference schedule. They're just going to cakewalk through it and then deal with hard games within the conference. Does that hurt the sport? That makes the first 3 weeks pretty much pointless for an Indiana fan in a way. And that's kind of where we're going, that it behooves programs to do that. I've said for years, I think West Virginia and Neil Brown, they stacked the out-of-conference schedule too damn tough. And there's no reason to play Penn State and Pitt in the same year and 11 Power Fours because no one else was doing it, and it made it harder on you but then you do lose the regional aspect. You do lose the rivalries. So that's all there, but we will see where we go. Bill Bender, again, of the Sporting News, joining me here on Mic Drop. Now, you mentioned the playoff. I kind of want to segue there. What do you want to see the playoff be as long as it can be? Because I could say perpetuity, but it's always going to be tinkered with. Do you like the 12-team playoff? Do you want to go back to the 4-team playoff? Do you want to see a 16-team playoff? The best thing college basketball does, despite also dealing with transfer portal and NIL and a lot of problems in and of itself, and the NBA, March Madness is just untouchable. It is great. It'll always be great. It brings in everyone's grandma to have interest, whether they like the sport or not. That's kind of what the NFL has, and that's kind of what college football wants to have, and kind of trying to have a playoff system, and they're doing it. But where do you want it to be? What do you want it to look like format wise? Even the 5+11 that has continuously been brought up by Brett Yormark, even commissioner of the Big 12, that he wants to see as the format. Or you mentioned you're a Big Ten guy. Do you just lean? You want a Big Ten and SEC to have all the spots? How do you want it to look?
I don't. And I think, well, first of all, I think we're going to be at 12 for a minute because they're just not going to agree on the next step. Okay. Whether it's between the 4 commissioners, where you're in this negotiation of sorts, where I think Brett Yormark likes where the Big 12's at. He's talking about multiple bids. He's in line with Jim Phillips, who's kind of been in the middle of Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti. The Big Ten, I love the Big Ten, but this idea of 4 automatic qualifiers to me is absurd. And I've thought that all along, that, I've made the joke, and we don't have to get into politics, but
right.
I don't want to turn college football into the Electoral College, where it's like 4-4-2-2, and you get, no, let's not do that. Let's do the top 16 teams. And I don't, like I said, don't forget, that's not like, it is what it is. That's how I feel about college football. What's the proper number? I mean, probably 16 down the line. That way you could do the first 2 rounds on campus, do the final 4 at the bowl sites. Everybody that should be in gets in at that point. One of the worst things about last year to me was I was sitting in the Tennessee-Ohio State game, and my entire timeline was people complaining about SMU being in the playoff or Indiana being in the playoff, which, to your point, Indiana, you could say they gamed the system a little bit, but I don't want to argue about 10-2 and 9-3 teams that much. And I think in a 16-team format, Miami, Ole Miss, Alabama, South Carolina, they would have got in, and there's your field. So, as much as I'm a traditionalist, I normally say, hey, I was cool with the BCS, man. I really was.
It does make you maybe think about what we had before that nobody liked at the time, but yeah.
Right, and we just keep adding more and more, and I don't know, at a certain point, it did make November in the regular season more fun, but as somebody that's in Central Ohio, I'm still grasping with the idea that Ohio State could lose to Michigan and turn around, not just win a national championship, but dominate and win a national championship.
Yeah.
And as you were telling me, is like, and I didn't really think about it till you said this, so I'm giving you full credit, and you can paraphrase. Ryan Day might have got fired.
I think he would have been. I think 100%.
Go ahead. That's you. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I know 100%. Ryan Day, I don't even think it's could. I think he would have been fired in even a 4-team playoff because they wouldn't have got in. So if you lose to Michigan, your rival, who going into the weekend, there was tons of pressure on Ryan Day, more than anybody in the country, to just win that game. They were the better team. They didn't. Michigan's coming off a national title, but certainly wasn't a national champion this past year after Harbaugh left. And you lose that, and the vibes after that, 100% were all fans wanted Ryan Day fired. Now, maybe people could argue Ohio State fans are unreasonable in some respects. That could be an argument. But I think in all reality, knowing the culture we're in, and knowing how the national media would have just been swarming after that loss, especially if that was an eliminator and you're not getting in a 4-team playoff or a BCS and you're done for national title and you have the rivalry loss, I'm pretty confident it's 99.9, if not 100% sure he would have been fired. And now, because of the expanded playoff, he's not. He goes ahead and wins the national title. And really, I mean, as long as he keeps on winning, even if he doesn't win a national title next year, he certainly buys himself more time because he at least has one. He probably went from being fired in an afterthought to being a Hall of Famer off of the playoff expansion. If you look at the path he could go on now, if he just trucks along 9, 10 wins, 10, 11 wins, he'll get in and at least has that one ring. Whereas without it in the Michigan loss, he would have been gone to me.
Yeah, and that's part of this, like wrapping your mind around new ideas and new things in college football. And I think that was one. The idea that I kind of like the idea of a 16-team playoff, the conferences where they are. I was not the biggest fan of like Big Ten and SEC expansion for the simple reason I don't like seeing conferences die. Like the Pac-12 death was not healthy for the sport, But I say that, and then I watched USC play at Michigan and Penn State play at USC, and I was like, hey, that's pretty cool to watch. And which is to my next point. You hear all these things about Super League. Are they going to compare it to the Premier League and soccer, and you're going to have 40 teams and just do it that way? I don't want to see that. I think part of me does, but like I said, it's you want to see the Big 12 and the Big 12. You know what? Here's an interesting point, and I'll let you take this. The Big 12, Brett was talking about how they had the most fourth quarter lead changes and the most last minute touchdowns, for victories. And the Big 12 in theory is doing what we should want. We should want parity. We should want an exciting conference race. We should want a conference where I picked Oklahoma State really high last year and Arizona State really low, and they flipped that.
Yeah.
But we don't. I mean, it benefits a conference more to have and since we're on this show, if West Virginia and Utah were just so much better than everybody else, it would benefit the Big 12 more to have it that way.
Right. No, 100%. Bill Bender, again, of the Sporting News here on Mic Drop. Mike Asti, as we're talking college football ahead of the 2025 season, the health of the sport, and then we'll get a little bit into the Mountaineers. And that's it. That's nail on the head, that the issue for the Big 12 is literally what they promote and they think is the best sales pitch of the conference. If you are a fan of just the sport in general and not any one team, maybe you went to Dartmouth and you just like college football, but you're not really looking at being a fan of a major conference team. For some reason, you're just an Ivy League guy. Then Big 12 is probably where it is for you. I mean, that is the parity. That is the most entertaining. That is the conference you can sit down and you're getting a competitive game, whether it be the first team versus the last, middle of the pack, doesn't matter. But that's the issue. I mean, the argument in favor of the ACC being a little better than the Big 12 right now, maybe health-wise, they're both very similar. They're both outside the top two. What the ACC has is what the Big 12 had that does not have now. Once it lost Oklahoma and Texas, there's no longer that guarantee, pencil them, pen them in, 10 win at minimum in the playoff every year program. There are programs that have history. There are historic programs that could. Utah's, Oklahoma State's, West Virginia, it's been a minute, but they have the history behind them in some respects. But Oklahoma and Texas, I mean, if, just pen them in to go, that's what the ACC has with Clemson. Again, you figure that's going to be them this year. It could have it with Florida State or Miami any given year. They have those powerhouse brand name programs. The Big 12 doesn't have that right now, but they do have the parity. But it is better to have the top programs that could win a national title or get in every year that have that brand, even if you don't have the depth, than to have the depth. That's the situation that college football is almost put together, that it's better to have one or two top programs that could win it all and the rest kind of be crap than to have legit depth because they're just beating up on each other. So that is the situation right now. And it is interesting because, of course, Brett Yormark's trying to hedge himself a little bit here. He's arguing that he doesn't want to just get locked into only two, whereas the other conferences could get 3 or 4. But there's a possibility with the 5+11 that he only gets 1 instead of the 2. So he's scrapping a chance at a guarantee of 1 more team for the off chance that maybe he gets 3 in a year, when in most years it'll probably be the conference champ and that'll be it. So that is maybe better for the sport in terms of fairness. You do want to have the top teams just get in, but it's interesting that he has that opinion because it's not necessarily always going to be best for his conference.
Well, and I would get your opinion on that. So like for me, if we did a model where, okay, well, so what we were just talking about, first of all, the Big Ten it's always revolved around Ohio State, Michigan my
Sure.
lifetime. My editors get annoyed because I tell them that. And yes, I'm in the bubble, but I'm like, this conference has rolled around 2 schools for pretty much my entire lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period
yeah,
where Michigan was really down. You could
right.
argue Penn State then. I mean, now if you include USC and Oregon as part of the conference, you can argue them. But
And
you're
Oregon
right.
did win it in year 1, and I think that's what. So to me, it's like, how many
Right.
schools do you have in your conference can wake up? I guess it's 2 separate discussions. The first one would be, how many schools in the Big Ten wake up today and say, "Hey, we can win a national title this year," and mean it, not just be like, we're dreaming.
Well, the difference also is you can wake up and say that in the Big Ten and not even be required to win your conference.
Right.
Again, going back to Ohio State, that's the advantage of the Big Ten or even the SEC. You can wake up and say, I can be a national champion. Doesn't mean I necessarily can win my conference, but I can get in and be a national champion. And the part of fairness, while it may annoy ACC and Big 12 fans, there are more quality, competitive, great programs in those conferences. So if you take an equal amount in all the conferences, that wouldn't really be fair. You're having more quote unquote good teams in those top conferences. Like Penn State, for example, last year, Bill, if West Virginia would have beat Penn State, imagine that scenario, or even the reverse. Imagine Penn State obviously mopped the floor with the Mountaineers. What if Penn State destroyed West Virginia last year? They finished 3rd or 4th in their conference. They don't get in, and even though they did, and then West Virginia, what if they would have won the Big 12 and then they do get in? You'd have a team that lost head to head getting in, but not clearly the better team in Penn State. So that could exist based on what happened last year. Those weird scenarios could exist, but the most of the best teams are in the Big Ten and the SEC, and they have been for 30 years. Look at all the national titles. They're mostly from the SEC, especially. That doesn't mean all of them. That doesn't mean that only them should be the teams that get in the playoff. But I do think if you had a playoff where it was like 3 teams ACC, 3 teams Big 12, 3 teams Big 10, 3 teams SEC, and then you had to add a group of 5 or a couple of those, no matter who is good or bad, no matter records or rankings, I don't think that would be fair really either. I mean, you could argue that Penn State, you could argue that maybe they should have had what Boise State was afforded. Maybe they should have had a bye instead of having to play the first round game. They're in a tougher conference. You could argue strength of schedule was tougher, even though they weren't near winning that conference. So strength of schedule is a big deal. We do have a situation now that teams are almost benefiting from scheduling as easy as possible and just stacking wins, which what does that really say about who's a better team or what's going on? But that right now is the system that just stack wins and make the schedules as easy as possible. But it's hard to debate that the Big Ten and SEC are not the best conferences. We can debate where the ACC and Big 12 finish below. You do need to have a system that all 4 of them can at least compete to get in. But I mean, Bill, and we'll transition into West Virginia here in a moment. It's also interesting, and I'm sure it's interesting for you in all your years covering and all the different changes, not only different changes with the sport, but different ways the sport crowns a champion. There's books out there. And I've told people who run programs all across the country that this is my opinion. You could argue from the inception of the sport for the first 100 plus years that every single champion's mythical, and there's no way to factually know that they're really the national champ of that year. There were people that were voting and just giving someone a national title off of a poll who had never even traveled across the country. I mean, in the 30s, when the AP poll started, the Eastern voters, had they ever been to California in their life? How can they really evaluate what's going on all across the country? And separate from that, you have programs claiming national titles off of years where they lost head to head to another team that claims the national title. If you lose head to head and one team's undefeated and you have lost, how are you both the national champion? That doesn't make any sense. There's years where there's a bowl game and the 2 teams that played share a national champion. Look at 73 with Bama and Notre Dame. The loser of that bowl game should not be crowned a share of a national champion. That's utter madness. But that went on. And then even with the playoff format, you have UCF not getting in and then claiming the national title with a strength of schedule that was barely in the top 90 and like 1 or 2 top 25 wins. How is that fair to teams who are playing 5? Alabama had 5 ranked wins in 2017. UCF had 1, and UCF claims the national title share. is that fair? So we never have had this be fair. It's all kind of been all over the place. We'll see now where we go. And I do think the one thing the playoff at least does, and we go back to Ohio State to kind of tie it together. Look at the NFL. This is always an analogy. We'll see if you like this, Bill. This is always an analogy that I give in a comparison I give to people when we're talking about, how to crown national champ, or even the Wolf rankings said that Oregon was the national champion last year and Ohio State was just the tourney champ. To get around all of that, look at the 2007 season in the NFL. The Giants won the Super Bowl. Eli Manning got his first of 2 rings. They beat an undefeated Patriots team. If they played 10 times, the Patriots would probably win by 20 points 9 of those 10 times. They lost that one game. That might even be the best team Belichick and Brady ever were a part of. But they lost that game. The champion of that year is Eli Manning, Tom Coughlin, and the New York Giants. And Randy Moss doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. If it's the college football way of things, they just would have said, well, you can share a national title and you go ahead and get a ring. That's not what we're trying to do now with the playoff, that you got to win this playoff format more than just having somebody rank you somewhere. So that's kind of the hope, that we get rid of the mythical champs. Maybe that at least will do something for the health of the sport to actually know who was the champion. But even with Ohio State in the expanded, it was a bit weird for them to win after the Michigan loss. Bill Bender here of the Sporting News, Mike Asti here on Mike Drop. Before I let you go, I know you have a little bit of a time crunch. I do want to get your thoughts on the Mountaineers. You talked to Rich Rod. You talked to some other players there. You talked to some other coaches. The opinions for the Mountaineers are all over the freaking place. People think they might win 3 games. Other people think they might contend for the Big 12. We have had programs in year one turn it around and contend right away, but 70 new players in and out. Rich Rod's been a minute since he won in the Power 4, even though he won at Jack State. What are you expecting out of the Mountaineers in year one? And what do you think is reasonable for the fans to expect? You just talked about how this is an historic program, but it's been 6 years since they even were ranked in the Associated Press poll, as insane as that sounds. The Brown tenure, I like the guy, but that was the darkest period since the 70s for WVU football. The fans are hungry, but it is year one for a coach changing a lot. But it is the NIL and transfer portal era where you can quickly change things. What do you expect, and what should fans expect in year one for West Virginia?
Well, I mean, it starts 70 plus transfers. I mean, that's, I don't know is the easiest answer. Like when you have that many new bodies, and I think, Rich Rods is still sorting it out. I think, this idea nationally and what we wanted to explore was, when you think of West Virginia football, you think of that period of time with Pat White and Steve Slayton, and they're pinballing through, defenders and just running for touchdowns. And that's not going to happen overnight. And I think Rich Rod knows that. And I think, there is this notion that the band is back together, and, you try to put it in a time warp, but we're going to have to wait and see. So I think this year, I think it's just the excitement factor of having him back on the sideline where he belongs and where he fits. And I say all the time, fit matters in college football, and he fits. It's like Mac Brown at North Carolina. You could see something like that happening where, Mac came back and it was good, right? He produced 2 NFL quarterbacks. They won. People will say they underachieved. I would argue North Carolina's won 7 to 9 games my entire life. So it's not like they underachieved. So
I mean, their peaks below what West Virginia's peak's been, though. I do feel, knowing the fan base, that if that's the 5-year tenure, I think they're going to be disappointed.
If they win 9 games every year?
Well, no, I mean, if they win, first of all, a lot of people are upset about the Bill Stewart tenure, but if they do win 9 games every year, that's certainly a good tenure. But with North Carolina, I mean, they ended up losing to West Virginia in the Mayo Bowl. How many bowl wins really existed? You end up firing him, or really kind of ousting him, if you want to use their phrasing. He left not really thrilled. He kind of said, I want to stay. And they were like, nah, we're going to do something else. And they had some lean years, even though they had a couple years where, they produced an NFL quarterback and were competitive. Didn't win a conference title, didn't really contend for one. I think in the 5-year stretch with Rich Rod, the fan base were expecting to at least get in the mix for a Big 12 title at one point or another.
And that's easier to do in the Big 12. I mean, I'm looking at it now. Mac was 44-33 in his second stint, which, to your point, that's not, you look at that, if when he leaves and they're 40 and 35, you're going to be like, well,
yeah, I don't
we're
think
kind of
so.
stuck in neutral.
Yeah.
But also Mac was going up against the Clemson machine, and
True.
Pitt won one of those, I believe. Pitt's the only team, I think, in the playoff era, I'm pretty sure this is correct, that Pitt is the only team not named Clemson or Florida State to win that conference.
Yeah, besides those two, yeah.
That's
so the
wild.
two power brands and Pitt got in there.
Then Pitt stuck in one. Whereas in the Big 12, I think in 5 years we could say, man, they had 5 different champs. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. So,
especially now, because he won't have Oklahoma or Texas in his way. I mean, that was the issue for the Mountaineers for so long during the Holger. They had 2 10-win seasons, but you're dealing with Oklahoma and Texas in there. That won't be the case for Richard. I mean, historic program-wise, West Virginia is the winningest program historic-wise in the current Big 12. Doesn't mean right now they're the healthiest at all, but that's the history. So we will see. I do think the fans, for year one, though, do you think a bowl appearance and a brawl win would be satisfactory for you for the Mountaineers, or is that not even enough? I do think the brawl wins part of it. I think they got to win the brawl, which may not be easy, even though it's at home. Pitt likely will be the favorite. People are all over the place on what they project out of them as well. Do you think a bowl appearance is enough for year one? For
what do you project their record in the Big 12 to be?
I mean, I haven't done it fully. Right now, overall record wise, I probably look at West Virginia with a ceiling of 7 wins. That's overall. It's going to be tough in conference play. The out-of-conference schedule is easier. They're starting with Robert Morris. They're not starting with Penn State. So you got 1 win. They're going on the road to Ohio. That's a good program for that level, but they should win off of talent. And you just crawl out of there with winning. That'll be all that matters. The brawl is at home. They could start 3-0, but then could lose 3 straight. So it depends. They're going to have some tough road games in conference play. I believe they have more road games than home games in the conference. The last time I looked at the schedule, I right now 7 wins seems like the ceiling for the overall record. I haven't fully looked into the conference yet, but I think that would be a good year.
7-5, and then a chance to go 8-5 would be a home run in his first year.
I think so,
and especially if
may not happen.
The tone setter, of course. The backyard brawl is huge, and then they're playing my alma mater in week 2, which is for an Ohio grad. It's like, that's probably the biggest opponent to come in there since Pitt did. With Pitt had Tyler Palco, and OU won that game, by the way. We've had Iowa State and Minnesota come in there. It's crazy that West Virginia's coming to Peden, and I know how awesome that's going to be for Ohio University's standpoint. The OU, by the way, plays our non-league. Nobody says Ohio can play a non-league schedule. We play Rutgers, Ohio State, and West Virginia this year.
Stacking a schedule, maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little too much. But I get into. I would say 8-5. If they went 8-5 and won a bowl game in year one, the things that would be written going into year 2 would be off the chart. It'd be like, okay, it's going to work.
Sure. Here's a question for you then, Bill. Because the reverse of that, 2001 was a 3-8 season. Rich Rod's whole career, that first year, except for Arizona, where he won right away, the first year, going back to Salem, Glenville State, West Virginia, Michigan, certainly, that first year is always rough. This is a different era now with the transfer portal and NIL, and he didn't have to deal with Neil Brown's players. He, of course, kept some of them, and Jaheim White and Nico Markiel and others, but he was able to bring a lot of his guys. He has a great coaching staff, got Zach Alley as a D coordinator out of Oklahoma. They have more money there than they had under Neil Brown. That's true. And you got to tour the facility. It looks like a power facility. It looks like what it should be, even more so than what he had during his first tenure. It's better than what the perception might be at West Virginia. They got something there facility-wise. However, if year one ends up being a 3, 4, 5 win year where they miss a bowl game for whatever reason, how much of a freak out session do you think fans should have if you're a Mountaineer fan? Because there's a lot of angst. They just want a winner so bad no matter who's the coach. And I don't know how many of those years they can handle mentally before they would get this rolling again, even though there's a 5-year deal. He's in his 60s now. If it just craters out and they're really, really bad, what does that say to you about the program? And and how should fans handle that?
Tough answer. I mean, it would mean that, the reality of the answer is one you're not going to want to hear, is that maybe they can't keep up in this new era.
Right.
Kind of brings our conversation full circle. You wonder, look at what schools can do the 22 million plus compensate, without the help of like some mega boosters. I know one thing in West Virginia's favor right now, and it was in the conversation with Pat White, like Pat McAfee's a thing that helps the program. In a super, like,
if they're a borderline, imagine if they're ranked 15th or 18th or something, and you got McAfee involvement. I mean, that's a good bump. If you
he's a big personality in the sport, and the perception that he has certainly helps the program. Now, I'm wondering, as we do this over the next several years, okay, in 10 years, are we going to be like, well, there's only really 10 programs that can do it in this environment, like with the Ohio States and Georgias, and although with some SEC schools, it takes the right coach, In the 90s, it was Florida and Tennessee. It's not that anymore. So which programs can truly do this? If it doesn't work with Rich Rod and at Craters, that would tell me that, man, they're going to have a hard time doing it in this era. Although I still don't think in the Big 12, all it takes is the right coach, right team. I mean, Kenny Dillingham, no coach improved his stock more in a 1-year period than Kenny Dillingham did. I would argue maybe Kurt Signetti, but Kenny Dillingham won a conference, has a quarterback. Cam Scadaboo, I think, is going to do good things in the NFL. It can be done in 1 year in the NFL or in the Big 12, and it'll be very interesting to see if Rich Rod can do it in the Big 12.
Yeah, and I do think, too, that even if they have a really bad year one, it doesn't mean that the whole tenure is going to necessarily be bad. They could pop in year two of Rich Rod, but I just don't know how long the fan base is going to really want to wait. They do have, Pat McAfee and some prominent support, and they do get national TV games. They do have a rabid fan base. There are good things to like about the program now, but it is still very, very hard to do that kind of turnaround. It's a full cultural turnaround, a full roster turnaround, so many unknowns. I mean, the reason why they're projected to be last by so many national writers is because I've had many of them flat tell me. I asked Rich Rod how the team's going to do. I asked him who's going to be the starter. I asked him what the depth is going to look like. I asked him who's going to be an impact player. I asked him for a dark horse player. All that. And Rich Rod would tell him, I don't know. We'll figure it out. I don't know. And then they're left with, well, Rich, I'm going to have to pick you last because I don't know. If you don't know, I don't know. I'm going off of what you're saying. So that is the reality as well. And maybe they could certainly flip it and kind of buck the trend. A lot of great West Virginia teams were predicted to be last and won titles. It certainly can happen. And we've seen it in this era. But there's room. I think it's just as likely they have a 4-win year as they have an 8-win year. It is just as likely either way. And that could really upset the apple cart on what's going on around the country. So you previewed it here. And I guess last bit before I let you go, what can you give us from your conversation with Rich Rod or anybody else in West Virginia about the program, about their situation, about whatever you talked to them about before you release that story, I guess. And we're not live, so maybe I'll hold it for you if you want. No. But what can you give me from your conversations that you had down there in Morgantown about now this new era, the oldest new era for the Mountaineers?
Oh, I think you'll enjoy the read. And it's not, I think Rich Rod has learned from his many travels. And one thing I did figure out is he never coached at Hawaii in 2020, which is on, some of these sites where it's been reported that he was an analyst in Hawaii, because I asked him the question and he's like, I wasn't in Hawaii that year. So I do have his exact coaching lineage. I made him do every stop. While I was talking to him.
I'm sure he loved that.
So no, he was actually he was the one doing it. And number two, here's one takeaway I had. There was a video of, I think we were standing there when he was yelling at the assistant coach or the player or whatever.
It went viral. That was the practice you were at. Yeah, he went
viral. And
right.
I literally didn't react because I was like, maybe it's a generational thing, man. Where I was like, yeah, that's what coaches do. They yell at other coaches and players in practice. What are we doing? Why is this a thing? Yeah. His style, this whole idea of hard edge.
Neil Brown wasn't doing it. It's a different thing than the last 6 years in Morgantown.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I always say there's so many different ways to coach.
100%.
You can have the guy that doesn't swear. You can have the guy that swears. As long as they're getting the point across and the players like it and it's not abusive, we're good. And I think Rich Rod, it was really enjoyable sitting down talking to him. I think he's a He's a good coach. I think he's where he belongs. And all these stops, I'm a big fan of like full circle stories, and I think it comes full circle there. And like you, I have no idea what it's going to look like on the field. It's hard to say, but I do know it's going to be good for the game. And I'm really excited to write the story because I think it needs to be told. Bill Belichick, Rich Rodriguez, those are the two coaches that I'm most interested in this year for very different reasons.
Yeah, I definitely think Rich Rodriguez is one of the most intriguing, interesting stories in the entire country this coming season. I could argue he's under the most pressure of any coach coming in, because I do think the vibes of a 3-8 versus 7-win year are going to be very, very different for the fan base. Obviously, Rich Rod's having to get a lot of fans back on his side that were not on his side and right the wrong. But if he starts losing, they may fall off. So it'll be very, very interesting what happens with Rich Rod this year, to say the very least. And hey, they moved the win percentage bar. I'm sure you saw this because of Mike Leach. And I think it's a good thing for Leach. They moved the win percentage bar for the Hall of Fame. Well, we all know Mike Leach is going to be put in there. I think Rich Rod, unless this is really bad, has a great chance now because he has the exact same win percentage as Mike Leach. He has conference titles. He has BCS crowns. Mike Leach didn't win any of those. I think if you look at the totality, even going before the Power Four and way back to Glenville, West Virginia, Arizona, Michigan, onward and upward, some good, most good. Michigan was not great, but I think Rich Rod certainly has an argument, and I wrote about this, has an argument for the College Football Hall of Fame now, especially with Leach getting in. So we'll see what he does with that in the coming years. Was there anybody else you talked to when you were in Morgantown that you can share anything from that conversation before we let you go?
No, I mean, I talked to Pat White, talked to Noel Devine, talked to Rasheed Marshall. I connected with him this week, and
he's a good guy.
Yeah, they were great. And again, it's just this. Yeah, it feels like the past, but what is it going to mean in the present? And I had good perspective from all three of those guys who obviously know Rich Rodriguez very well.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, it was a fun story to write, like I said. So I hope the West Virginia fans like it. And one of the questions I did ask, and I even asked you, is like, what is the mood around the fans? Because everybody will say, well, it's great. But, there were, from what the tone I got was there's some reservations at first, like there are. Right? Like, is this guy really coming back? But once he's back and settled and established, it does sound like the fan base is rallying behind him. I get all that. I mean, you're talking to one of the most loyal guys around. I've been with the same company for going to be 18 years in September. My kids play for the same. We don't do that club jumping stuff that people do. My kids aren't in the portal. So I understand loyalty by a great deal. And, I understand the West Virginia mentality. Southeast Ohio isn't all that different. There's too many Steelers jackets around West Virginia, just like there's too many Steelers jackets around Southeast Ohio. I can get that dig in there.
Yeah. You're you're a Green Bay Packers fan. If you can see the helmet there behind you, in Ohio. But yeah, that really is it. That really is a situation. It feels like that Rich Rod has re-energized the fan base collectively. There certainly are some that have reservations and some that will always have ill will from what happened after 2007, after that season. But I think even the people that hate Rich Rod are very intrigued by the season, by the year, by 2025 and what this could mean for the future of the program and for his return and for this now being a bookmark of a new era. And let's be real, Bill. We can end this way. Let's be real. We know sports fans. We know college sports fans, maybe more than any other sport fan in the world. If you win, they'll love you. If you don't, they'll hate you. So if Rich Rod comes back and he wins a Big 12 title, they got 15 conference titles. That's top 20 all time. They don't have any in the Big 12. Not really close. Maybe one or two times under Hogerson, not close. If he wins the first Big 12 title in this era and gets in a playoff, they'll love him. That'll be a Disney movie. There'll be a documentary. It'll end positively, even if they don't win a national title. If he does not, and they peak at 7-8 wins, it'll probably be split forever. If he ends up with 3-4 win seasons and they are really, really bad, even if it's because there's not enough money there, he'll be hated. That's just the way it is. And I'm sure he knows that right now. The staff knows it. The players know that. So he is putting his legacy a little on the line. Because if he goes out there and wins 3 games a year, he might get in the College Football Hall of Fame, but I don't know if he's going to get tons of Mountaineer support there from fans. They just want to win. They don't care who's the coach. And if you're going to be a coach that's going to lose, they're going to turn on you. That's what happened to Neil Brown. He was a great guy, didn't win enough. There was reasons for it, but didn't win enough. That's just it. So we will see what happens. It's going to be a very intriguing story. Maybe they'll get game day because it's going to be very, very intriguing. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of national conversation one way or another on Rich Rod. And I even said to you that if it goes the negative way, we'll see how he turns and how he is personality-wise for us and me to deal with.
Right.
He's been great so far. It's been a humble Rich Rod. I don't know how that'll go, if we'll go viral for negative ways if they don't win some games. Bill Bender of the Sporting News, I appreciate the time. Maybe we'll be talking to you again here as the season gets underway. Look out for that piece that he has coming on Rich Rod's return and the Mountaineers, WVU fans for sure. And I'll get your national champ prediction here for a future story at some point here that maybe you'll put out there. So we'll see how that goes. But, Bill, I appreciate it, man. Talk to you soon.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me on.
Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Love having him on. Talked to him, got to see him recently. Actually got him. That was when I met him for the first time. I've had him on shows like this for years. We've done digital shows, met him virtually, but finally got to meet him in person when he did stop by Morgantown to cover Rich Rod's return and look at the Mountaineers during fall camp. And he happened to be there during the Rich Rod yelling at his coaches. Maybe it was really more coaches, by the way, that he was yelling at than just players, yelling at some coaches too, just really letting it loose. And that happens every practice. That happens all over the country. It didn't really happen under Neil Brown. A couple times he did yell, not like Rich Rod, of course, but that's just something to get used to. I don't think that, that doesn't mean anything more than it's a funny viral clip and it's the Rich Rod way. But great to be talking to Bill Bender there. Catch his work with the Sporting News all throughout the college football season for sure. We'll give you more here on college football, the pro scene, the Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia, of course, what those seasons do here on future episodes of Mic Drop. And you can find my Mountaineer coverage if you're a WVU guy at WV Sports Now. That'll do it for this edition of the show. You can find every episode of Mic Drop available everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. Also available on SiriusXM and made possible by the Believe Network.